Out of the top quarterbacks in the 2022 NFL Draft, Sam Howell is by far the most frustrating. On one hand, you see the arm strength, you see the improvisational ability, and you see some laser throws down the field. While on the other hand, you see a player marred with inconsistencies. Do yourself a favor and go from his game against Virginia Tech to Notre Dame, and then watch Wake Forest and South Carolina. In those 4 games alone, you see a roller coaster of a quarterback, a player that hits some ridiculous throws but also missed some layups. Out of the top quarterbacks in this class, it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if Howell ended up being the best. It also wouldn't shock me if Howell ended up as the worst. Before we look at him further, if you can do me a huge favor and like and subscribe to my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. So anyways, I mentioned Howell and the frustrating level of inconsistency he showed all season. Howell is a great scrambler. He is extremely slippery in space, and he was the Tar Heels' best threat on the ground. On the opposite side, he has a nasty habit of playing hero ball, and this caused him to take too many sacks. There were plays where he had receivers open, but opted to scramble and ended up going down the backfield. With that being said though, he did show a ton of upside. Let's look at one of my favorite plays on the season. This happened against Florida State in the first quarter. It was 2nd and 20. UNC was lining up on Florida State's 33-yard line. Before the snap, UNC was in shotgun and they had a trips alignment to the open side of the field. Meanwhile, Florida State was playing with 3 deep defenders. They're actually playing cover 6. This coverage is a combination of cover 4 on the open side while they played cover 2 towards the boundary. Many defenses will call this coverage because it allows the underneath defenders to be aggressive, especially on the sidelines, while also giving them the flexibility to cover deep down the field. The one thing you have to worry about as a defense though is if the slot receiver crosses the face of the deep middle safety. This route can cause coverage busts if the backside safety isn't watching for deep crossers. That's what happened here. Howell starts to play by looking to his right. Since it was 2nd and 20, he probably wanted to pick up 5 or so yards underneath and make this 3rd down more manageable. This would also get UNC in field goal range too. As Howell started looking in this direction, this actually held the deep right safety to this side of the field. The safety is watching these 2 routes, and he didn't have any clue what was happening on the other side. Meanwhile, the slot receiver is running a post route, and he does a great job of attacking the feet of the deep defender. The center of the field safety is playing this route a bit too aggressively. The slot receiver is able to stack the defender with a quick jab at the top of his stem, and he makes his way into the end zone open for the score. I want you to pay close attention to Sam Howell in this one. It's his eyes that allow this play to happen in the first place. If he started by looking at the post and stared at that player, the deep right safety would have bailed and he would have been there to stop the throw. Howell looking to his right opened the defense for this pass. The other thing I want you to notice is the pocket that Howell's working with here. One thing that consistently stood out to me about Howell is that he doesn't have the best pocket awareness to sense where he should be standing. If a defender is collapsing a blocker in front of him, Howell will be oblivious to that action. He's way too comfortable throwing trash at his feet as opposed to stepping to his left where he has more room. This play was excellent due to his vision and his placement, but the pocket awareness is something he'll need to keep working on. Howell made a great throw and UNC was able to score here. Before we talk about his accuracy and his mechanics, I want to give a huge shout out to HelloFresh for sponsoring this week's video. HelloFresh is here to make eating better and easier. No grocery stores, no stressful meal planning, just everything to prepare a wholesome, delicious meal all delivered to your door. This week, my wife and I tried the pork and zucchini bibimbap. It was so incredibly good. The produce was fresh and had a ton of flavor, the meat was portioned perfectly for both to share, and the recipe was so easy to follow it made the entire experience effortless. HelloFresh has more 5-star recipes than any other meal kit, and they even offer quick and easy recipes that can be finished in under 20 minutes. Now, not only was everything delicious, but what I love about HelloFresh is how their pre-portioned ingredients help you cut down on prep time and also help you waste less food. HelloFresh cuts down on your food waste by at least 25% compared to grocery shopping. If you go to HelloFresh.com and use my code SamGold16, you can get 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Again, go to HelloFresh.com and use my code SamGold16 to get 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Back to the breakdown, let's talk about his accuracy. Howell is the case example of how poor mechanics leads to poor consistency. Sometimes the ball will be in a perfect place, while other times Howell will sky the ball throwing it way over the receiver's head. This was on all levels of the field. In back-to-back throws, you see him hit a player in stride, then on the very next throw, the ball wouldn't even be close. This, in my opinion, is all due to his mechanics. Howell has an over-the-head throwing motion that starts low and ends high. There's no weight shift, there's no leg drive, his feet are pretty far apart, he's essentially muscling the ball down the field while keeping his hips completely out of the throw. Because Howell holds the ball so low, his release takes forever to finish. On top of this, Howell has a nasty habit of patting the ball before he starts his motion. This is a definite tell to the defense. Now, to his credit, he gets a good bit of speed out of his throwing motion, and the velocity was never the problem. He actually has a really strong arm. The issue simply comes down to repeatability. This is something I never saw. He was very hit or miss. The thing about Howell is that I get this feeling that he's some sort of chaotic mixture between a Baker Mayfield and a Josh Allen. His size and build is much more like Baker, of course, but the inconsistent placement and hero ball tendencies is something I saw a lot from Josh Allen. His tendency to scramble and want to play hero ball was both frustrating and somehow oddly infectious. His drive and gamer mentality was extremely apparent anytime he ran with the ball. He would lower his shoulder, he would spin out of tackles, and he would much rather fight off opposing defenders as opposed to protecting his body by sliding. To his credit, he did slide more as the season went on, but he'll definitely need to keep protecting himself more in the future. Now, this mindset and mentality goes all the way to his playstyle. It strongly influences how he sees the field. He would much rather run with the football in his hands than wait for a receiver to get open. Howell rarely used checkdowns unless they were a direct part of his progression. UNC ran a lot of half-field concepts, and this is when the checkdown would come into the picture. If the checkdown was on the opposite side of the field though, he would often miss it. During the season, Howell took a number of sacks simply by holding onto the ball for far too long. He would have a checkdown available in the flat, but he would sit there holding onto it. The same thing happened on third down when he wants to play the hero and he decides to run the ball before the snap. He'll lower his eyes looking for an outlet, and then he'll get sacked in the pocket. This was frustrating because there were opportunities for him to throw the football. If he stepped up and kept his eyes open, he would see receivers open for a pass. Instead of doing this though, Howell would scramble, and he took a bunch of sacks solely for this reason. I mentioned pocket awareness before, and combined together, I think these tendencies are going to lead to a bunch of sacks in the NFL. So far in this breakdown, we've talked about accuracy, his tendency to play hero ball, and how he's a really good runner. What makes Howell a tricky player to forecast at the next level is mainly the inconsistency that we talked about before. His game against South Carolina was the perfect example of how he was somehow able to channel his accuracy. Multiple downfield strikes hit the target in stride, and honestly, I was blown away by his placement. The annoying part is that no other game featured this level of prowess. His game against Notre Dame was close, but man, that South Carolina match is the one I think scouts are going to focus on for his pro abilities. Can Howell repeat that performance and recreate some of the awesome throws he made? That's a really hard question, and I have a feeling Howell's going to go earlier than most expect. I currently have him as a mid-second round pick, and I can easily see a team wanting to harness these abilities. Well, that's all I have for you in this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. We have about a week left or so before the NFL draft, and I'll keep trying to do 1 or 2 more scouting reports on this channel. Make sure you keep a lookout for those. Thanks again. You can support me directly via my Patreon in the link below, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Samuel R. Gold.